Hello, welcome to Snickerdoodle Stitch. My name is Kathleen and this is a channel about cross stitch mostly. You can tell from behind me though that I also do a little bit of quilting, but this channel will focus predominantly on cross stitch. So a little bit about me. I've been cross stitching for about 40 some years, give or take a few, 40-ish. I started when I was very young with a kit that I got at a department store that was going out of business. I didn't know anybody that had any idea what cross stitch was. It was just this little kit of daisies, and I taught myself to do it from the kit. And then after that, I was fortunate enough that in my small town that I grew up in a pretty rural area, we had two stores that sold cross stitch supplies, and I was fortunate enough in college to be able to work at one of them. It sold smocking and cross stitch supplies, and had a wonderful time there. And then in college I worked at a larger craft store which also sold cross stitch supplies. So I was a very avid cross stitcher for many years. Typically had a larger project going at home, sometimes large enough like a Mirabilia that it required a frame. And then I always had travel kits. So you know, we're talking then in my early 20s, so I had a very social life, but a lot of it was just hanging out with friends, watching movies, watching TV, talking, and while doing that or visiting with family, I was just always stitching. So very prolific then. Fairly prolific up until I was about 40. Turned 40 and a lot was going on. I was working on my master's. I had a new cat who really thought that, you know, right here was where he should be 24/7. Made it a little difficult to cross stitch. And then, as many people experience when they're 40, my eyesight started to go. So I was requiring readers, really just couldn't see that well, I thought, to be able to cross stitch. So I took a hiatus from cross stitching, and that's when I really got into quilting in more recent years. But then fast forward to about Christmas a year ago, so right at the beginning of 2022, my cat died over the holidays. I was looking for something else to do in the evenings to keep me busy, and I had a kit that I spotted in Joann's, and it was just on Ada, and I thought, you know what, let me give this a try. I have some really good lights now that I bought for quilting, some Daylight Company lights, which I cannot speak highly enough about. I have several of them, and I'll talk about those maybe in a future Flosstube. But anyway, great light, key to being able to cross stitch as the eyes start to go. So yeah, I picked up this kit and worked through it on Ada, and it has just been a rabbit hole since then. I have a couple very good friends who cross stitch. I have another stitchy friend who I need to look up the name of her channel. She has also started a Flosstube, and we've been able to go to a few events and are going to StitchCon later this year together. So I thought I would start just by showing you the finishes that I had in 2022. I did have over 20 finishes, and then a few of the finishes that I had done prior to that in my earlier stitching life. But I think it'll give you a little flavor for the kinds of things that I do like to stitch. I like everything, like I said, from very large projects to quick, easy, fast stitches. I do all of the finishing myself, including the framing. When I mentioned I worked at a larger cross stitch store or craft store when I was in college, they also did custom framing. So I was fortunate enough to learn a little bit about how to frame. I didn't actually do any framing, but I was able to observe them doing framing, so picked up some tricks there. So yeah, I will jump right in since I know the stitching is what everybody really loves to see. I mentioned that I had a kit that I picked up. It was actually in the magazine section at Joann's, and it is a pattern by Margaret and it's the kind of kit, it's put out by, I think, probably one of the British magazine publishers. You know how the British magazines often are wrapped in cellophane and they have like a free project with them, and this was not with a magazine, it was a separate project, but it's this Margaret Christmas Cuties. This was the pattern from the kit. mentioned that I had a cat. I don't have any pets now, but I do love cats. And I have collected mice of this little cute variety since I was a very young kid. Sort of fell into it by accident in the 70s when cute little mice motifs were pretty common on greeting cards. And well, I've got a couple little wall plaques from then. Christmas ornaments. These really cutesy little mice were popular in the 70s when I was a kid, so I very much got into them then. But this is just on the Ada that was in the kit, and I think it is 14 count. But this is the finished project. It does have some metallics in there. They're a little hard to see. They're up here in the scarf on this mouse. The gold in there. But that is the first thing that I finished in 2022 and what restarted my passion for this. So that was finished number 1. So after that I was feeling adventurous and I dug through a lot of patterns that I had stashed up for quite some time. And I had this Dragonfly Quaker pattern. It is from Sticky Dean van der Wiehnenburg. I'll put the name of the pattern and the designer below. The designer does have a website, but Garon Stitchery is also carrying patterns from her. I don't think he had this one, or they had this one, but they are carrying this designer of patterns. So I love the clean, even though it's obviously an older style. I think the Quaker style also has kind of a clean, modern aesthetic to it. Let me back up so I can get the whole thing in. So this was a lot of fun. It took me about a month. I did it on a frame. I am a frame or hoop stitcher. I don't enjoy stitching by hand. I never did. And now with a little bit of arthritis in my one thumb, it's really not practical. But yeah, it's all blues and greens. Kind of a tealy blue and a deep forest green, the color of my shawl that I have on, which is my favorite color. So this is on 14 count Ada as well. It's plain white Ada. I actually like Ada for Quakers. The Quaker patterns to me are so geometric and, like I said, can look modern, even though they're definitely not a modern thing. And that geometric aspect to them, I just think Ada lends itself well to that. So yeah, to speed up the stitching, and Ada comes in a nice true white. So that would be my preference for Quakers. I do want to do, and I meant to pull it up, Susan Aki. Her last name is spelled A-C-H-E, I think. But it is pronounced Aki, like hockey. She has a wall that's all Quakers or samplers, and they're all just white fabric, white frames, and done in reds. And it would definitely go with the main part of my house. You can tell from behind me that I am drawn to brighter colors. So I would love to do one of those, but so far all I have is a little bit of a redwork sampler. So after those two were fairly large projects, I wanted to do something kind of small, and I saw this pattern online. I did buy it at I think Fat Quarter Shop, and I don't have the pattern anymore. I gifted it. This is Thimble Blossoms is the designer. If anybody knows Bonnie and Camille Fabrics from Moda, it's the same designer or one of the two. And this was just a fast little quick stitch, and it's on 20 count Ada. So I decided to stretch myself a little more. I had no trouble with the 14 count Ada. So then I thought, well, shoot, let me try 20 count and see how I can make out. I used to do a lot of stitching on Hardanger, which is 22 count. it's not called Ada, but it is essentially like a 22 count Ada. And I don't really see anybody do that anymore, but it is still one that I would enjoy stitching. But this is 20 count, plain white Ada. Really fast stitch. It's in the larger frame because I originally planned to mat it with red, and then when I went to Michael's to buy the red mat board, they didn't have it in stock, and now I've kind of gotten used to looking at it like this, which is the no matting. So I'm probably just going to leave it this way. So that was my second stitch for the year. Then I love Lori Holt, and I picked up this flea market flowers, was so excited to work on it, and I have to say I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I was going to, and I'll tell you why. This was a lesson for me when I stitched before, you know, 15 years ago. Generally the patterns just had a photo on the front, and they were pretty true color. What I have found with more modern patterns is that the color is often blown out. So this is much brighter than when I actually started to stitch it. It didn't look nearly as bright, and it was partly the bright colors that I was drawn to. So here's my finished piece. It is on a 28 count even weave, which actually was not entirely even, and if you looked closely you could see it in like the larger flowers here. They're not actually perfectly round. The vertical is a little longer than the horizontal, so it wasn't perfectly even, but it's perfectly fine. It works for this. What I did do, there is a yellow in here. The yellow in the centers of this pink is supposed to be all of the yellow that's in here. So like the yellow here, the yellow up here, let me get going the right direction. But I did swap the yellow out for a brighter yellow to try and brighten up this whole piece. Because I was, like I said, I was a little disappointed in the how muted the colors were. It's designed by Lori Holt, and I love Lori Holt's fabrics. At the time, most of her fabrics were really bright. She had a lot of reds, really clear, bright, true colors. She's now moved to slightly more muted tones, it seems, and this was maybe the beginning of that trend. But I got a little bored with this too, so I've started working on multiple projects now that I've fully gone down this rabbit hole. And I think I would have enjoyed this more if I worked on it in smaller chunks and mixed it up with something else. So after tackling that, that was fairly large, fairly time-consuming project. Those flowers are very stitch dense, so it's a lot of stitches in there. I had seen this pattern and fallen in love with it. I think it's really intended for like a nursery or a birth sampler. It says sometimes the smallest things take up the most room in your heart, and then there's a place for the date, the name and the birth date. I decided to do this as sort of a memorial sampler for my cat that I had lost, because when I think of small things in my heart, that was what came to mind. This was a good small one for me to test out, am I still able to stitch on linen with my old eyes? So this is on 32 count Atomic Ranch weathered stone, and lots of online stores carry Atomic Ranch Garon stitchery. Definitely has them. In fact, they have a Fabric of the Month club that is with Atomic Ranch. But this weathered stone sort of had a pinkish hue to it. I've bought some since then, and it has a little bit more of a greenish hue. But it's definitely different than just your average cream that you would find. I made a couple changes. So I put, this was my cat's name. He was Jax. These are the years that, his birth year till the year that I lost him. And then I made a few changes. And let me figure out how I can arrange this so you can see it. The pattern up here has what I think is an owl and a bear, but I'm not entirely sure. So I swapped them out with the cat and the flower. The flower I just stole from down here. And the cat is actually one of the cats that is in the JBW Kitties in the Round. And I'll show you Kitties in the Round in a little bit because I did do that pattern as well. So I swapped those two things. Other than that, it is, let me double check. It's all the called for colors. The pattern came with these little buttons. There's this little house, and there's a flower up here and a little heart. So those came with it. And it is framed in a thrift shop frame, which I did paint because it was a little scratched up, but 50-cent thrift shop frame. Say that 3 times really fast. That was the perfect size. So that was my next project. Then I'm really fortunate. I don't have a Needleworks store that is like right in my town or anything, but I have multiples that are within an hour of my house, and even more that are within like 2 hours of my house. So this is from Hodgepodge, which is in Strasburg, Pennsylvania. It's less than an hour from my house. And it is this Little House Needlework pattern, which I fell in love with. She had it stitched and kitted, well, the fabric cut to the right size in a blue fabric. So I bought the pattern and the fabric from her. I did it on the blue. I did make one change. This alphabet is supposed to be a really dark brown. Anybody who knows me knows that I do not like brown. I don't like working in brown, and I will quite often swap out brown. So I did swap it out for this dark blue in here. So that's it all done. And I just made it. This is a fabric that was for my quilting stash. So I made the bell pull, and then it just has a little flap that's folded over and stitched down there, so that it would hang on here. And that is on, the fabric was a 28 count linen, and it's not an overdyed or anything. It's a standard Zweigart. I can put in the YouTube notes what the actual fabric was, but it's basically just a light blue gray. So that was my next one. Then I started this one, but this one took me a really long time to finish, and I'm really not happy with it. So it may never get fully finished, which is not like me, but I love the little faces on these snowmen. They were just so whimsical and cute, and I love Teresa Kogut's patterns. I'm not a Dancing with the Stars fan though. I mean, not that I dislike it, it's just not something that interests me. So I haven't watched it. So, and I wasn't going to stitch this on brown. So I did change the colors on this. This is stitched on a 14 count Aida, in this blue color. And then the snowmen, instead of the called for color, I did it in, I gotta figure out how to do this. I did it in Weeks Dye Work Icicle, and then I made a mess with the stars. So I decided to do the stars in a metallic, and I used a DMC metallic, and I should have used a Graphique because the DMC metallic was a nightmare to work with. Yeah, I may just make this into a pillow or something. You'll see up here, I do have a library card that I start for each project, and I keep them all in a little book, just so that I can keep track of how many projects I have in the works. And then when I'm done, it goes with the finished piece, so that when it's framed, I put them on the back. So I've done that for years. You'll see it on some of my older pieces as well. I know you can buy library cards just for, they sell them now like for stitchers, but really just go to Amazon and look up library cards and envelopes. and you can get them fairly inexpensively. My only complaint would be that the envelopes don't stick very well, so I generally add a little framing tape. But that was my Dancing with the Stars. It's cute anyway, but I'm not in love with it. Some, you know how some pieces you absolutely love, and then others when you finish you're like, it was okay. So then for my same shop, Hodgepodge, I kept seeing this blackbird pattern. I was probably drawn to it because of the greens and blues in it, and I don't know if I can get it to pick up the greens and blues properly, but so I really wanted to do this blackbird, and I kept looking at it and looking at it, and I finally broke down and got it. And this actually went very quickly, and it is done on a 32 count Celadon. All the called for colors. I think there was one color. There was one of the greener colors that I didn't swap out, but I added, in my 2 strands, I've used one strand of the called for and one of something that was slightly different, and it was because it was disappearing too much on the Celadon. I think it's this right here. It's like a snowflakey kind of motif there. Not sure I'm in love with this frame. I might rather have a darker frame, but I have 3 of these that are all the same molding that I bought in the Oops pile at Michael's, and it does work for this. So we'll see. I want to do 3 things framed on one wall in my living room, this being one of them. So it kind of depends what I do for the other 2. I really want to do something on a darker green, similar to the, this is looking kind of blue on camera, but this is actually pretty, it's a dark bluish green. And I have some fabric that color in an over dye, and I want to do maybe a Quaker on it, so it would look really good in the white frame. So we'll see. I'm leaving it in this for now. It's all framed up, but I did it myself, so easy enough to swap out. Let's see. I mentioned doing Kitties in the Round by JBW, and that is my Kitties in the Round. It's done with a Unknown Silks for You floss. I got one of their, I think it's called Bits and Bags bundles. It's 10 random small skeins of silks, and this purple was in there, and I did it for a swap. Put it in this jar. It actually fit perfectly. This jar is from IKEA, and the lid has a recessed section to it, so it actually does fit down in there. Originally, I thought I would make it so that it could be swapped out, but it is, I did back it with fabric and then actually glue it in there around the edge. It wasn't really working to do it with a Velcro dot or something like that. But this is 1/1 on 25 count Lugana. So, and then the cording around the edge I made with the same silk floss as this. I'm not really, purple's not my color. It's not going to go anywhere in my house. So when this was in the set, I thought, oh well, I'll do it on the Kitties in the Round in the purple for a giveaway. And then the retreat that I went to didn't actually have any swaps, so I ended up bringing this back home, which was unfortunate because it was a retreat that I knew everybody, or likely everybody, was driving there. Nobody was flying, and this is too heavy to do as a giveaway that somebody would have to deal with in their checked bag or carry-on bag at the airport. So, you know, maybe if it was back in the days when baggage was free and unlimited. But so then I kept seeing this Primitive Hare Spooky Countdown. It's really hard to tell in their picture. Yeah, a couple shops actually had this stitched up, and I kept falling in love with it. And I had a yellowish fabric at home that I really, after I got it home, it wasn't really what I, you know, how you see a color and by itself it looks like one thing, and then when you get it home and you compare it to something else, you're like, oh, that yellow's more green, or it's more orange, or it's a lot darker, or you really need something side by side for perspective. Our minds don't really truly remember colors. Um, so it's a 32 count sand. I think Witchelt or Whitechelt. It was a little stiff, but I work in a frame. Like I said, I did do this on a scroll frame. Um, and it took me about a month. It's all of the called for DMC, so it's just DMC. And other than the top banner that says Spooky Countdown and then the bottom banner, it was like doing 31 smalls. So it was kind of nice to do in these little bite-sized pieces. Just a little, thing each day. Had I looked at it more closely, there's some that's a little gruesome. Like there's actually a hangman's noose up here. This was a rat, which yeah, I might have swapped out, but it's cute. I'm happy with it. It is in a standard size frame that you can get at Hobby Lobby. That's where I got the frame for this. I certainly am not spending a lot of money for a frame for a seasonal piece. This one does not have glass. You will see most of my pieces, if they're going to hang up year round, I do frame them with glass. I live in the Mid-Atlantic Northeast, and we all have, at a minimum, as a backup heat source, we have gas or oil, just because of the temperatures that we get to, and gas or oil, even running just when it's really cold as a backup heat source, they're dirty. Like when you go and take something off a wall that's been hanging there for 5 years and you see kind of this weird gray outline, that tells you if you have your piece hanging there after 5 years, your piece is going to have that gray on it. And it's just a film from this heat that we have to use because it's cold. Yeah. So then I was still in the Halloween mood. I am pretty much a seasonal stitcher. I want to stitch what the season is, or a little bit before. Some of this, like the Spooky Countdown, I actually had done before Halloween so that I could hang it up. But then I saw this Willow Hill Samplings Autumn Alphabet. And I love the cat. I love the turquoise pumpkins. So I decided to stitch it, and it was charted with Gentle Arts, and I think I did all of it in Gentle Arts except the lacy edge, and I just used DMC for that, like a $37.99 maybe. So this is on 32 count, picture this plus Heartland. And you can see I used the called for Gentle Arts, but the pumpkins are considerably different. So that's where when they say, if you're working with an over dye, get however many skeins you need, because the next skein might look very different. I actually liked this on the pattern better, but it's okay. I'm happy with it. I did it was a good reminder for me to really pay attention to the size, like to look at that on the back, because just looking at the front of this, in my head it was much bigger, and it's only, I don't know, 5 by 7. It's pretty small. So yeah, I've gotten better at paying attention to that again, because it's not going to work where I thought I was going to hang it. Then I mentioned, even when I stitched years ago, I always had travel projects. And so my travel project, my first one this year, was this little Mill Hill kit. I have all 3 of these mice. I did mention that I have collected mice since I was a kid. So I finished this little guy. I started him when I drove out to Galleria last year. And so this was my travel project that I took with me. And then I took it on a work trip. But he's on the paper, and I just finished him with some wool on the back, and this is some of that DMC thread that I hated stitching with on the Teresa Kogut snowman, but it is pretty for a hanger, so that's how I'm going to use it, because I have no plans to stitch with that ever again. But yeah, I love Mill Hill kits. I know a lot of people don't like working on the paper. I actually like the paper. And they're fantastic for travel kits, because grab a little pair of scissors and the kit and you've got everything. You don't get somewhere and go, oh, I forgot this color, or I don't have these beads, or I like to stitch in a hoop and I don't have my hoop. It's a very compact, small thing to grab and go, and you have everything. The needles in there for the threads, the needles in there for the beads. You are set. So I love them from that, and I find them relaxing to stitch on, but that's just me. It's a little bigger than I would like for an ornament. My ornaments, I usually like to be like more 3 or 4 inches square. And this one, of course, it's a Mill Hill, so it's, what, 5 inches? Yeah, 5 inches square. But he's cute anyway. So then I was in a Christmas ornament kind of mood, and I had done several big projects, and I put my Christmas tree up and decided that I didn't have enough ornaments. So I worked on several. I'm trying to find, oh, there they are. I knew I had all the patterns here. Let me take this off. So from Finally a Farmgirl, I worked on this little Santa mouse with this little Santa mug of cocoa with the whipped cream on top, and he's actually holding a little tiny bear. This is Finally a Farmgirl as well. This little mouse peeking out of the chimney, and then I don't know why I stitched this upside down. I think the hoop was fitting on there better. But this little Santa here, mouse making the gingerbread village, and he's got a little mouse helper over here. So those were Finally a Farmgirl patterns. She has the little Matilda mouse on lots of things. Let me hold these up, you can see them because they're bigger. That was the Matilda's Bedtime. That was Santa Mouse. He's eating a little cookie there while he works on the gingerbread. And then that was Up on the Rooftop. So I didn't finish these yet. But that's the first 3 that I did. These over here. Then I worked on this 25, this little guy in the stocking, and this guy over here with the cookies. And these are from Christmas Ornaments. I can get this going the right direction. I'm not covering anything. Yeah, it's from this book. And I got this from oh shoot, it's the Crusted store that sells Silk Weavers fabric, and I'm drawing a blank. They're in New Jersey. Well, anyway, it's Christmas Ornaments by X's and O's Needlework. Then I still had space on this fabric, and this fabric is a 25 count Stormy Clouds, and this is all stitched 1/1 because, again, I like my ornaments to be smaller. So these are all coming in at maybe, I don't know, 1.5 by 3, 2 by 3. This little 25 is like 2 by 2. So with my space that was left, I did this little Joy, and that was a free pattern from Luminous Fiber Arts by Misty Purcell. Love her stuff, and I recommend if you sign up for her email, you will get occasional free patterns. But I just thought the little the little bird on this one was so cute with his joy. And I do love red, but I decided I wanted to do it in a different color because I've been doing all these others in red. And I got this color wash hand painted Japanese silk in some D-stash that I bought on eBay. And so I decided to give it a try. And it was actually a dream to stitch with. But I did the joy in that. It's not really coming through. Maybe you can see it. It's got some blues and greens in it, so it's a little mixed. So I didn't I didn't do any final finishing on these. Honestly, when I was working on this joy, it was Christmas week, so between that week between Christmas and New Year's, and I've got space over here for one more. So I'll go ahead and put my one more on before I cut them apart and start finishing them. So probably I'll do a Christmas in July and put an 8th one on here, and then I can go ahead and finish these so I have them ready for Christmas this year. Then I had this Bent Creek pattern, Winter Row, and it was, I think, Designer Focus Week for Garon Stitchery, or Focus Month was Bent Creek, and so I went ahead and worked on this. Now, a couple things about this. This is a newer version of this pattern. The older versions, or the other version that you will see out there, does not have all of these buttons on it. See, this hat is a button, this tree is a button. There's a lot of buttons happening on this pattern. My local stitch store had it stitched up without the buttons, and I liked it better. And so I did not stitch it with the buttons. It's stitched on 36 count weeks dye work Sky. And that's my finished piece. It is all the called for colors except for the snowman. And the snowman I stitched with 2 strands of Splendor Silk so that I could get better coverage. And I'll show Splendor Silk in another video if you haven't seen it. It's an inexpensive silk. It comes on a card similar to this color wash. I think it's by the same people that put out like the Whisper, the fuzzy kind of floss and stuff. But it's very inexpensive and it has really good coverage. And if you've ever disliked the way white coverage looks, using the Splendor Silk solves that problem. So, and then this was just a thing I bought at Hobby Lobby. I looked everywhere for something that was approximately the right size. This was the closest I could get. It's mounted on foam core. I can tell by how thick it is. Foam core with some batting on top. And I stretched it around that, and then I've just glued it down on this, this frame thing. And this is just some pre-bought silver cording that I wrapped around there. So this sits on a ledge inside my door in the winter, or it did this winter. This was actually earlier in the year, and I do not have the pattern for this. This is silk on, I think, 36 count linen 1/1. I don't have the pattern. I think it was a Graphique kit, because I know it came in a clear plastic box with the fabric, the pattern, which was just paper, and the flosses, and I know that's how Graphique kits up theirs. I may be wrong on that, so I'm not gonna put anything in the comments, but I had started this back around 2008. I remember I had special readers that I used just to work on this, and all that I had left to do on it was some of this blue up around the top, but then this was around the time when I couldn't see well anymore and had really just stopped stitching. But I finished it up. it did require some extra magnification. So I should mention, in addition to the lights, I do use some sort of magnification. One of my daylight lights is the one that's round and has the magnifying glass, and you hold the light kind of, you know, you position it over where you're working. I have another daylight light that's a slimline, so it's just kind of this really long tube. It's nice if I'm working in a frame and have a pattern and need a little more broad spectrum of light. But if I use that, depending on what I'm stitching on, I'll use mag eyes, the magnifiers that clip on your glasses, so that I can see better. So I did one more winter finish this year, and this was Garrett on Stitchery had a Teresa Kogut designer focus month, and so I did this one. I think that was last December. I love everything in this book. If you haven't checked this book out, I bought it because I like the one on the front, but then inside, like, how cute is this little bee Mary down here? And then I'm looking for the flowers. Oh, this isn't even Christmas. These little snowmen up here are, those are very sweet. But then this little Friendship Makes the World Go Round with these little animals is just so darling. Every time I look at it, I wish that, like, I don't have any kids, so I won't have grandchildren, but maybe my nieces will, and I'll stitch that for some little one, because that would just be too cute in a little kid's room. But also in here is the snowman clown. So this guy up here is the one that I did choose to stitch. This one down here with the flowers and the snowman, they have a sample stitched in here on the cream, and then there's one on the blue. And it really, you know, it really looks different, but both very pretty. But I love this book, and this snowman clown went super fast, and I had a lot of fun stitching it. It's on 28 count White Chalk Babbling Brook Lugana. It is 2/2, and it's in all the called for DMC, except the weight is that Splendor that I mentioned. And I finished this one in 3 days, according to the notes that I have on my library card. But I was so excited. So I already had the fabric pulled. I was starting to stitch on this. And then I was in Marshall's looking at frames, and I was looking for like something in a white that wasn't a true white. So that is the only thing. The Splendor white is not a true white. So I was looking for something in that color and spotted this frame with this teal and this blue, and I kept thinking, I think that's the colors that are in that snowman. And it's a little hard to tell here, but this outer band is almost exactly the same color as this greenish teal in here. And then we've got this bright blue, which is almost the same as this blue that's on the edge of the band and on the little bird over here. So this frame was perfect, and it's just a 4x7 or 4x6. It's a standard frame. Fit in there perfectly. There's not even a row cut off anywhere that you can't see. I didn't put the glass in here. I took the glass out for 2 reasons. One, because of the kind of frame that it is. It was just, it's too puffy to close if you get the glass in there. And also for the seasonal pieces that I'm storing away for a large part of the year, I actually prefer to not have glass. It's just one more thing to worry about with packing, breaking, and there's enough breakable things happening in the seasonal storage. But so that was Snowman Clown. Super fast, super fun. Just a cute light little stitch. So I enjoyed that one. Now I'm going to go back to, that sort of went 2022, beginning of the year to the end of the year. And I'm going to leap back prior to 2022 and show some older pieces. I'll show the one that for many years I was most proud of, this one, and it is a Mirabilia, and it is Fairy Moon, and hopefully I can get it up here all in frame. without a glare. This one took me about a year, working in a frame, only at home. No, I was an age, like I said, where I had a lot more social life. So I wasn't home as many nights, and definitely not on the weekends. So, you know, when I say a year, that was probably 3 evenings a week that I worked on it. But yeah, and nobody would stitch on cream now, right? We'd all look for something more exciting with the overdyes and everything. But I'll get part of it up closer so you can see. So you can see there's a lot of beads on there. That whole moon inside are beads. And then all of that like pixie dust trail, those are all beads. Beads down in her dress, and then down along the bottom, the clouds there are all beads. So yeah, it's just 32 count, I don't know, antique or something, kind of linen, whatever we would have had then, which would have been limited options. But I do remember that she was a lot of fun, and I was really proud of her. And I will do a whip parade, and I have a large angel. It's not Mirabilia, it's lavender and lace, which was actually Nora Corbett's mother who designed those. That I'll show when I do my whip parade, that is partially done, although I'm not sure I'm going to finish it, and I'll explain why when we do that. This little, sorry I keep reaching down, I need to figure out a system to manage this. This little guy is from this 9 Lives book by Judy Mason. It is out of print, but I have seen it on eBay and D-stash sites under 10 bucks with shipping. It's one that's selling pretty cheap, and it does, if you're a cat lover, it does have some really cute cats in it. I think when I got it, I know I wanted to do this Himalayan because I had a Himalayan cat at the time, and then I had the orange cat. So this is the guy that I did here in the middle. But this is on silk. And so he's actually, let me see what count he actually is. If I can find the pattern. There it is. So if you did him on 14 count even weave, he'd be 6.5 by 6, and he's like 2 by 2 in here. So he is done over silk, and then he does have the frame that goes around him in the pattern. But I will say, all that cream background, that is not stitched. That is a piece of cream colored mat board that I backed that with to show through. No way was I stitching all that background. That just wasn't happening. So yeah, and the mat that he's in, that was at the time how I bought the silk. It was just this silk in the mat. I didn't even know it was silk. That I actually figured out more in just the past year, but it was just this gauze stuff, and I thought, oh, I could do like needlepoint on that. So that's the cat on, let me see, I think I counted, I think I figured it out. Yeah, 40 count gauze is what I'm pretty sure he's done on. I am not sure I could work on 40 count gauze whenever one again, but I did buy some recently to give it a try. But again, that's 9 Lives by Judy Mason. Some cute cat designs. So that in the mirror, the ones that I'm showing you now are ones that I stitched many years ago, but still actually hang in my house, and it kind of shows that some pieces are timeless. There are a lot of pieces that I stitched that I know I ditched to Goodwill or I got rid of them. So my only advice for a new stitcher is you definitely want to stitch what you love and what you enjoy stitching, but I would avoid stitching a lot of something that I would say is like current trendy. you know, home decor changes, and some of those trends and things will look very dated at some point. Just look at some of the, not all, but some of the cross stitch patterns from like the 80s or 90s, and you kind of roll your eyes and go, oh, yeah, teddy bears. I remember that. So yeah, it's a lot of time to invest in something and then have, you know, family members throw it away or take it yourself to Goodwill, things like that. But anyway, I love shepherd's bush, and these are going to be hard to see, but they are these tiny little leaflets. They are still available. And these two still hang in my house. They are done on 32 count linen as well, and you'll see the cream linen. I'm telling you, back in the 90s, your option was white or cream. And then you had a few options in thread count, although really all you saw was 32, 36. There was Lugana and some even weave. But there was no overdyes, and even the colored linen was limited. So, you know, you had like kind of a Wedgwood blue, kind of a sagey green. There was a pink. I mean, there was maybe a dozen colors of linen. But these two are shepherd's bush. They have stood up to the test of time for me. They actually hang in the bedroom. They do have some drawn thread work on there. And you can see on the Amaranth, see this pink showing through here. I actually have a pink piece of pink mat board behind there because I wanted the drawn thread work to stand out a little more. So these two and the Mirabilia I actually framed at a framer's. So they were done at a frame shop, but it was a frame shop that used to be here locally that you could go in and pick out your molding. And on camera they look like they're scratched, and they are not. You could pick out your molding, and then when they had the molding ready and the glass cut, you scheduled an appointment and you went in, and they had these stations, and they would have like 4 people in there framing at the same time. I mean, 4 customers. So you did the framing yourself with just a helper, and it was a little bit cheaper, and it was fun. But yeah, these have a lot of specialty stitches on them. So if you wanted to try some drawn thread or specialty stitches, I recommend the shepherd's bush just because they're nice small sizes. You know, the patterns are a couple dollars, and it's just DMC and linen, so you don't have much of an expense tied up in like a big kit, only then to find out you need drawn thread or something like that. I have one other shepherd's bush. This little one, I'm not as crazy about this one anymore. It's also one of 32 count linen. It's all the called for DMC. It does have some drawn thread work in here. You can see in the lines. Yeah, and there's more up here, but it's predominantly cross stitch. This is called Forget Me Not. Oh, and I forgot to mention the other two were Amaranth and Bilberry. But that's a shepherd's bush. Then I have these two little guys. I did these for the bathroom, and these are really old. They are by Serendipity Designs, and it's called Curiosity and Washing Up. I did look online, and Serendipity Designs does still have a website. It looks like they're still available through their site. I didn't see them anywhere else, but and my framing is kind of a disaster on these. I finished these sometime around 1997, and they're just on 32 count linen. They originally had mat board on them. The mat board faded, so I threw it away. I think I'm gonna take these apart and paint these frames. I bought the frames at the cross stitch store where I bought the patterns. I think I may tear these apart and paint these frames and then reframe them, maybe with a mat, maybe not, we'll see. But the gold is, I don't really have anything gold in my house anymore, so or brass, I should say, not gold. And the last thing that I have to show was a Butternut Road. Again, this is by the same designer as Lavender and Lace and Told in the Garden, and it's all Nora Corbett's mom. And this I finished somewhere around 1996. It is just on a cream colored Aida. This one still hangs in my house, and I don't have kids, but I just love this one. And I do remember I had a blast stitching this one. It was so much fun. Which has me thinking I need to look at some more Butternut Road, or maybe some of the smaller. Actually, I'm working on a Lavender and Lace now, so I'll show it at the Whip Parade. So that's everything that I had to show for today. I hope you had fun. I hope you come back. If you liked the video, click the like button, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye!